everybody. Welcome to the Infinite Lorcana podcast. I am Disney's deck doctor, Jeremy Bertarioni, and with me as always,
Syed.
And, the elephant in the room right now, we've got the second set coming up of Lorcana, so today we are going to talk spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers.
I figured there's lots of stuff for us to talk about. There's some obvious inclusions to some existing decks. I think that there are some new decks that might come out of the new set. And, frankly, the game is doubling in size. So it's about to be a whole new world of Disney Lorcana content. Zam, what cards are exciting to you? What do you think is our first priority? What are we talking about first?
We should talk about the yellow cards.
The yellow cards. All right. So what jumps out at you in yellow? What do you think Amber is getting? Amber, what do you think they're getting? In terms of most exciting from the new set, and so when I think Amber, I think the Amber Steel deck. Do you think that deck is going to get a lot of improvements, or is Amber going to find new colors to work with in this set?
Yeah, I think that Amber could see potential play with the Ruby. I think that was a deck that was kind of coming about by the number one player on Pixelborn, but that number one player is now Kendall
Burdett?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Kendall hit number one. I don't know how many matches he has played, but he is definitely, I think, the best player in set one.
So I was going to ask you, when it comes to, we just saw the Invitational. Congrats to Harlan Fear for winning the Invitational. Mm-hmm. We saw people play there. I was going to ask you if you thought that is Kendall your, if we're fantasy drafting Lorcana players, the CPAC one pick one?
For set one, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
Great.
I wish he was invited to the Invitational. He definitely had the most top eights. He definitely had a lot of top eights. I think he had at least 5, maybe more. And we ended up having a 1K at Charlie's collectible show, and he ended up no splitting that 1K and winning it. He beat me in top 8. We played the mirror match, and he had the mirror, and I did not. But he played perfectly.
Okay, so the Infinite Lorcana podcast has crowned the Set 1 champion. Officially, it's Kendall Burdett.
Yeah, but Harlan and crew did super well. I think Brennan, I can't remember who else was on there.
Harlan, Brennan, Mason Clark. Their deck was...
Mason Clark. They were playing blue yellow.
Yep, they called it Rampunzel.
That's a cool name.
It's a cool name. I think their deck surprised me when I first saw it. I was like, this deck looks terrible. And then it was like, it was pretty good. We played it a little bit. I thought it was good. I top 8'd the 1K that Kendall won. I was playing Amber Steel because I'm like an Amber Steel guy.
Yeah, Amber's definitely an Amber Steel guy.
I'm definitely an Amber Steel guy.
He's almost always Amber Steel.
And then, but I thought, after seeing the Invitational deck in motion, I was like, maybe I should have played blue yellow this turn. Maybe Rampunzel was the correct choice for me. But bygones be bygones. What's interesting to me about Amber Steel, I know we're talking about the yellow cards, but we haven't really gotten as much yellow as for example, like Amethyst or Emerald have gotten early on in the spoiler season.
No, definitely. We have not gotten enough cards yet. But the card that does stand out, that is the question that you asked me, is Last Stand. Right? Banish chosen character who was challenged this turn. I think that's a great addition to Amber Steel, because the biggest problem with Amber Steel is that it sometimes has trouble finishing off characters.
Yep.
And even though this card can't be inked, I can totally imagine at least seeing 1 or 2 copies that allow you to just take out threats that are like really hard to take out, like opposing Surfer Stitches, opposing Elsa's, opposing Ursula's.
Ursula's the worst card for as an Amber Steel player. There's like nothing worse than an Ursula.
Yeah, it's pretty.
So this takes care of a 2/8. What I like about it is, so in set 1, the designers of the game were quick to show us the rules. Right, certain colors can't do certain things. Blue can't, or Sapphire can't draw cards. Things like that, rules like that. And then in set 2, they're showing us like how we can break the rules. So yellow doesn't usually have a banish spell, a banish action, but if you if you go through challenging a character, which is sort of more what Amber's always been about, then you do get to banish those characters. So I'm liking that they're showing us cards that are like sort of bending the rules a little bit and showing how like they're willing to go with design, which we've talked about unlocks new color pairs, right? Like you never could play Ruby Sapphire because you would run out of cards, but now there's a way for those color combinations to draw cards, and so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're on the same page about that. Like, I like that more color combinations are going to be possible because there's more drawability to them. I mean, red blue is like a deck that kind of like has some of the coolest colors. Sapphire, ruby. That just didn't have the drawability. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm excited about that color combination getting a chance to see some play.
As far as the rest of what we have, it's not great. Basically, there's a queen that tussles, but I don't know why you would ever play it because it doesn't really have enough.
Yeah, let's give it a number. What would you give it out of 5?
The queen out of 5?
Mm-hmm.
I guess like a 2.
Yeah, I'm in the same category. I'll probably give it a 2.
It's like pretty fine and limited, but not even that threatening because they're middle level threats, right? Like if we're playing Lorcana limited, I'm going to have some 3/3s and 3/4s in all of my decks. So you're super rare, Floodborn.
But the shift 2 is what really is appealing about this card. I could see this card being a 2.5 or maybe a 3, depending on if we end up ever getting a queen that costs 1. We don't have a queen that costs 1, right?
No, we don't. Well, that's what I was going to say. Shift 2 doesn't matter that much to me on the queen because the queen in the game right now
is the 5-mana
one that taps the draw card, which you don't even want to turn into a 4/3 beater typically.
Yeah, so let's just say this is a 2 until we get some cheaper queens.
It's a 2 only because if it gets in play and there's one other creature in play on the opponent's side, then you really do get to just make it lose all of its power and pump up one of your guys and kill it for free. So that can get card advantage. Like if it's on the board, it's tussling. It tussles pretty well.
Yeah, it could be good with like 4-mana Hades. Like, use the 4-mana Hades as like give it 7 attack. Right?
Yep.
And so I think that it has potential.
Whenever it quests, it basically turns one of your characters into a banish attacker. I mean, a great attacker.
Yeah.
Helps get through resist too, so it's not like.
So it's a 2 until we find some help for it. Then I think the next card we should go over is the new Rapunzel.
Okay.
Shift 3, really cool effect. Whenever you remove 1 or more damage from one of your characters, you may draw a card. That's cool, but at the end of the day, this costs 5 and it has no power.
So I don't know if this is how we're going to be like talking about Lorcana cards, but it invokes a lot of comparison to the Rapunzel that costs 4, the 1/5, remove 3 damage, draw cards equal to the amount of damage removed. That card enters the battlefield, rips a ton of cards. You know what I mean? I know this is an uncommon, but the fact that it has shift, it almost implies that we're going to be turning that Rapunzel into this Rapunzel, and that just to me seems like not a winning formula. 0 power.
Yeah. I mean, it could have some broken combos, so I think that it's like a 2 until we see. Like, shift cards always have this, like, hey, what if they gave us a 1-mana Rapunzel?
Okay.
So I think we should, I think I'm going to say it's a 2 until we get more information.
I think it might even be a 1. I mean, removing damage isn't something that like is like very common outside of things that increase card advantage anyway. So it's like making your card draw spells draw more cards for the price of you paid a 5-mana 0/6. So I'm like maybe on 1 or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely not a rare, but
I mean, the card isn't uncommon, so that you're getting uncommon rate out of it.
Yeah. Maybe this red-yellow combination will be sick, where you like have Maui that's attacking stuff, and
you're like healing the Maui over and over again. That does sound sick.
Other card we should definitely talk about is Mickey Mouse Friendly Face. This is a 1/6 6 for 6 mana that you can ink. It can lore for 3. Whenever this character quests, you may pay 3 less for the next character you play this turn, which is a cool effect. But I think we've noticed that like making cards cost less after you lore is it's like a win more situation, right? Like there's just too many ways to deal with your opponent's creatures, whether you bounce them or you put them into the inkwell or you just straight up destroy them.
So I'm trying to think of when you would need the ability, and it's if you have like a lot of, specifically almost like 9 and 10 drops in your deck, which the set is giving us some more of those, so that's cool. It's also cool with, so Amethyst sort of is going to introduce this like return creatures to your hand package. Mm-hmm. So something with like the Merlin Rabbit, right? You quest with that. Quest with Mickey, return the rabbit to your hand with one of your other creatures, draw a card, and you saved a bunch of ink.
I think a good way to evaluate these types of, I mean, if this card is good, it'd probably be good in like a blue yellow deck.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's like one of those situations. The more ifs there are, the worse I think a card generally is. And in this case, the giant if on this card is if this card lowers, then you get, 3 additional mana.
So your 6 ink character has to survive for a turn, and then you have to have the right combination of cards in your hand to make use out of that mana or
Not
that
only
ink.
That it dies straight up to a Maui.
Well, I mean, if your thing ritualed you and quested for 3 and then died to a Maui, I would say that's actually, I was going to say how bad is that, but it's actually pretty bad because it only left 1 damage on the Maui, so Maui can eat up all your other guys.
Exactly. So I'm going to say that card is actually a 1 in my book.
So we haven't seen great stuff from Amber, but we do have a lot of hope for Amber because Amber's whole mechanic of removing damage from your characters works really well with the new resist mechanic.
Yeah.
So just to explain that really quickly, cards are going to have something called resist. So if a card has resist 2 and it is dealt damage, that damage is reduced by 2. So if you dealt 3 damage to a character with resist 2, it would only take 1 damage. So if your opponent is having to go through all the trouble of dealing damage to your resist characters, all of a sudden it's a major big bummer where you're like, I'll heal my resist character for 3 because you functionally healed it for like 9 or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we haven't seen many good Amber cards yet, but resist is a great news thing for Amber. Yeah. Something like the Sapphire card we're going to get to, Cogsworth or whatever, give all your creatures resist 2, and then you heal your characters. I think that's just a really good spot. So I'm hopeful for Amber. We also have a new Cinderella that has shift, and the best Cinderella is probably still going to be the one in Amber. So I think Amber's stock is like still there. I think Amber is going to be a contender for the next set, and I'm hopeful for what, even though we haven't seen very many good Amber cards at this point in spoilers.
Yeah. I can see that.
You know what I mean? Like resist just has to be good for Amber. Amber specifically, the healing color.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about resist in specific is like it's actually a pretty difficult ability for newer players to digest because we were just getting used to like putting dice and remembering how much damage is there. Resist kind of makes it a little bit more difficult.
Remember when we were playing? I think it's like Hero Forge. Keyforge. Remember when we were playing Keyforge and my characters had armor? That was basically exactly resist. And you kept hitting my guys and you were like, it's not dead yet? I'm like, every time it takes damage, it takes 2 less damage. So it has 3 damage on it and it's got 4 health. And you're like, but I hit it with all my guys. It's almost like, it feels like it should be like only that much for a turn or something. Like to newer players, that's like the intuition. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we've personally been in a situation where something similar to resist was like hard for one of us to grasp.
Yeah, for me, yeah. It was hard for me. And I honestly didn't think it was a good clean ability, especially for set 2. So I'm not a big fan of resist, but I from that experience, I can say it seemed pretty powerful.
I mean, resist is strong. You know, it's going to be tough to find on a lot of cards. It looks right now like mostly steel
I'm
and
gonna
some rare
value
habits.
like just destroy target character way more.
Yep, that's right. Banish is going to be a lot more effective. You know, something like steel's removal, like smash, grab your swords. We have a card that completely blanks a grab your sword, makes it a blank card in this set. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Let's talk a little bit about Amethyst, and we're gonna kind of speed through. I don't really want to talk about specific cards, or not. I don't want to go through every card. I want to just talk about the ones that are really catching our eye. Fortunately, though, Amethyst probably at this point in spoiler season, we're about a quarter of the way through, has some of the most promising options. So I think I want to start off Amethyst with a card that's going to slot right into the existing quote unquote best deck. Right?
Wait. Well, one yellow card that we're missing first. The Grand Duke, advisor to the king. Your it's a 2 mana 2/2 that your prince, princess, king, and queen characters get +1 power. I think that this card could, if there is like a shift card for the Grand Duke.
Probably not. Grand Duke
Yeah.
is a very minor character.
Yeah, but if there ends up being a shift character, I think it could see more play. But also Rapunzel is, I mean, the we already know that there's a princess theme, right? And making Rapunzel 2 power does make a pretty large difference. So I could see some number of these see play in at least the yellow, uh, in a handful of yellow strategies. Yellow
Mm-hmm.
blue. Like if Rapunzel had 2 power, it would make a pretty huge difference in a lot of different situations. So I didn't want to discount not talk about that card at all. So I would say that card is like probably. I feel like we're giving every card a 2, but I would give it a 2.
I think that it'll end up in some decks just because it is a bear. It's a two ink, 2 power, 2 defense card. So it's like just not a bad like ink in your deck. You know what I mean? The fact that you can ink it and that it's like you could just play it on 2 to get on the ground early or whatever. Like I mean, in Lorcana, like early drops aren't that bad. Obviously for 2 ink, you kind of wish it was a 2/3 or could square up against Simba somehow. Like a lot of the Simba test is sort of the big test for creatures on 2 ink, and this one doesn't really pass it. So I mean, we'll see about that. But this one you don't feel as bad putting in your deck, right? Because you might just play
You're
it on
gonna
turn
just ink
two.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to skip the last yellow card?
Yeah.
Zero to hero.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Don't even play that card.
Mm.
We're not gonna even explain why it's so freaking bad. All right. Let's keep going.
Oh. Let me read it. Oh.
Yeah.
Every time I read it, I go, because every time I try to remember it, I'm like, what do you mean? Dark Ritual is great. And then I read it, I'm like, oh, never mind.
Yeah. Count the number of characters you have in play. You may pay that amount less for the next character you play this turn. So it's like kind of a win more situation, and you know that decks with Be Prepared are gonna be around.
That's the funny. You're like, okay, so I have 4 guys, so I can pay 4 less for my thing, and I had to tap one of them to sing this song. So now I'm gonna play my 10 drop early, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna be prepared. And you're like, well, I'm glad that I got to use 2 cards to let me get my 5th character out.
Yeah, I mean there is potential for this card, but I don't think so.
I mean, it's gonna be a while, right? The right environment has to exist where you're basically comboing off, and you need that ink jump. And I don't think we're there right now for sure.
All right, the cards that I really want to talk about are these purple cards.
And so I'm saying we should start with here's the one that's going to slot right into Ruby Amethyst control. What do you think about Sorcerer Spellbook?
Well, I mean that card is super broken.
Okay, so super broken.
It makes it so that now you can deal with the board, and once you deal with the board, then you just have to pay one mana to to gain lore. And so now there's like never games that go super long because all you need to do is find this card, stabilize the board, and they'll eventually die.
So, are you thinking it's going to start out initially as like a 2 of, or are we playing all 4 in the Ruby Amethyst deck?
I can't imagine not playing 4.
Yeah, because in the arms race of Ruby Amethyst versus Ruby Amethyst is going to be so important.
Exactly.
And I can think of a lot of things that get the axe. You can basically restructure the whole deck now because you don't have to. You don't have, for example, Aladdin. We don't need Aladdin anymore, right? We're never.
No. I think Aladdin becomes more important.
Really?
Yes, because the way you want to think about it is like, okay, my opponent is what do you call it? Inevitably going to lure me out. So how can I get back in the game? Right? You can play Aladdin, like small Aladdin, the street rat, which can lower the amount of lore that you have, right? Like, and then a lore that your opponent has, and then like, switch the race up. So cards like Ursula and Street Rat gain more. And then the big Aladdin, it's still inkable, but it still gives you the hope of like, helixing your way back into the game.
Sure. Okay.
So I don't think necessarily like if they weren't inkable, then we'd probably be like, okay, we gotta abandon the situation. But we have to, like, I was initially thinking we would get rid of Elsa's, but again, Elsa is like a time walk that allows you to use
Elsa's
this card
probably
even
one
more.
that we don't get rid of. I mean, we might get rid of like something like Ursula.
I mean, I think Ursula gains more stock because you are probably not going to be playing Magic Mirror anymore.
Oh, so that's what's going to go.
Yeah, and then you're going to definitely be probably losing Rafiki's. I mean, one card that I'm super excited about is like when you get rid of the Rafiki's, then you can play Madam Mim. I mean, that card is absolutely phenomenal.
I love Madam Mim. I mean, I like Madam Mim is probably the card I'm most excited for in Amethyst.
Yeah, Madam Mim Fox.
Madam Mim. Oh, right. Fox Madam Mim. So there's a bunch of Madam Mims and Merlins in this set, so we have to be specific. We're talking about the Rush 4/3 Madam Mim.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's one of my favorite cards in the set. So just to describe what it does to the audience, it is a 3 inkable storyborn villain sorcerer. When you play this character, banish her or return another chosen character of yours to your hand, and then it has Rush. So this is fulfilling that Rafiki slot, but you can play it as an ink. So sometimes it's going to be bad, right? It doesn't work if it's your only character. Mm-hmm. But the great thing about Amethyst is Amethyst has a lot of enters the battlefield effects. We're getting a new one. There's a creature that enters the battlefield and leaves the battlefield and draws a card when it does. Obviously, Merlin, sort of signifying the Merlin Madam Mim duel that they have in Sword in the Stone. Those cards are sort of intended to work together. But it being inkable sort of solves for that problem. So just cards I can think of that I'm excited to return to my hand. That Merlin, the Maleficent, the little one that draws a card when it enters. The new Pinocchio that isn't actually on the official spoiler yet, but we have seen the 2-mana 1/1 that quests for 3 Pinocchio. Mm-hmm. That could be really interesting to play that on turn 2, quest with it on turn 3, and then pick it back up so that it doesn't just die to combat and mim away one of their cards. Puts a lot of pressure on your opponent.
Yeah, but the major problem with it is that it is not inkable. And so the hardest thing about this deck is going to be figuring out what belongs in the deck and what doesn't belong. And so, like, thinking that, like, okay, we're getting rid of Mirror. What we have to do is make sure that the deck kind of, like, has enough draw effects that it gets to all of the things kind of naturally. Sure. And so what you're thinking is, like, okay, we're going to keep the 3-mana Maleficent, right, that draws you a card when it enters the battlefield. And then we probably want Merlin, right, which is the Merlin the rabbit.
The rabbit.
When you play this character and when he leaves play, you may draw a card. So this card is not inkable. But I can't imagine not playing all 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you're probably going to have to play all of these. And now Street Rat Aladdin is even more important because why? Because you can pick that card up and keep playing it, right? And so what I think is going to happen is like we're not going to have any kind of turns off. And so if you had a Pinocchio, then what it's doing is pressure on what cards we have to ink every single time.
Yep.
And so I can't imagine us playing a lot of copies of that 2-mana Pinocchio, that quest for 3. I do think that maybe it might be a mirror breaker down in the like later on once we figure out the exact build. But I think initially I'm not gonna. If I put that card initially in the deck, I think it's putting too much pressure. Like, I also think that I would more so lean towards the 1 mana Maleficent that quest for 2, because I think that 1 mana makes a huge difference, especially when you're trying. Every mana is gonna count.
You're trying to replay creatures. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's strong. That Maleficent is very good. Let's keep talking about some of the Mims, because in the movie, obviously, Madame Mim tries to win the duel by turning into a giant dragon. So as soon as I saw the first Mim and the first Merlin, I had two thoughts, actually. One of them is sort of just for fun because we don't have a card yet. But number two was, I can't wait to see the new dragon, because I knew that she was going to turn into a big dragon at the end. So we have Madame Mim, the purple dragon, 7 ink, and you can play it as an ink. It's an evasive, a 5/7, quest for 4. When you play this character, banish her or return another 2 chosen characters of yours to your hand. So this one's interesting because it's not as obviously good, right? The Rush Mim, the Rabbit Merlin, sort of a lot of the cards we've been talking about in Amethyst have been like broken on their. Oh, this is great. We're gonna play this 100%. This one doesn't fit in every scenario. It doesn't fit in every deck. So tell me a little bit about Purple Dragon Mim.
I mean, it's inkable. That's important, and I think it's evasive, so it's like in the same conversation as Mickey.
Yep.
What is it? Tiny Taylor.
Brave Little Taylor, because it's BLT.
Yep. It has a similar role with that card. It could be it can swing the race, but I think like again in the mirror match, it's going to be a liability because it requires so much to play it, as well as it just walks into a Dragonfire or a 9-mana Maleficent.
Sure.
I think it's not like, I think that it could see play as in like a 1 of or 2 of, and you got to really time it right when you're gonna play it, and the ETB effect of bouncing stuff to your hand could be a major part of its synergy. But I don't think that it's going to be like a 4 of, or like I think at max 1 or 2, just for like some type of combo to just keep the deck going. But it's fine.
Sure. Fine. I like it. Big Purple Dragon. The other card I'm excited to see is Merlin obviously wins the Wizard duel by turning into a germ that gives Madame Mim a sickness. So I can't wait to see Merlin's germ card.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Which they almost have to print, right? I mean, they did the squirrel, the goat, the crab, and then for Mim they did the snake, the fox, the dragon. It's like you gotta do the germ. It's like how the battle ends.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing some hypotheticals on what the germ could be. I was gonna say it was going to be a 0-mana card.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a aura on a character that causes them to become weaker and weaker as the turns go on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really it for purple. The rest of the cards are not really worth diving into. I mean, Winnie the Pooh, the art looks absolutely amazing.
People love this Winnie the Pooh art. They want it on a playmat. The card is pretty much whatever. I mean, it's kind of weird because it's almost like a steel card in a way, because steel is supposed to have like the biggest creatures. I guess it still does because it doesn't line up very well against Cerberus.
I just love the name, Honey Wizard.
Honey Wizard. I mean, Pooh's the best.
Yeah. I hope they make like a good Pooh card though.
Right, because the other art that has Pooh on it is like also not very good. I'm stuck. Chosen exerted character stays exerted. That's pretty much worse than exert target character by a lot. So,
yeah, that card's terrible.
I mean, that card's terrible. I can't really think of any context in which it would see play. At least you can play it as an ink. Maybe if you're trying to fill your deck with actions for some reason, like if you have a character that quests for the number of actions in your graveyard, this is like helping you get there, but even then, probably not.
No, we really got to rack our brain to figure out a way to make that card be good in any situation. So, yeah, this card's terrible. If it was a song, maybe it sees play, but not even a song.
So we can move on to
green.
Yeah,
Emerald.
the Emerald cards. I think early on in spoiler season, we all got a taste of like potentially one of the most powerful effects in Emerald. Definitely trying to take advantage of your opponent maybe having a reckless creature. We got Bell, the hidden archer. So this is a 5 mana, can't play it as an ink, but it's a Floodborn, so you can shift for 3. It's got 3 attack, 3 defense, and it quests for 3. But here's the crazy ability. Whenever this character is challenged, the challenging character's player discards all cards in their hand. So if they hit this with their characters, then they're out. They have no more cards.
Yeah, but it's one of those abilities where you can just time it perfectly.
You're saying the opponent?
Mm-hmm.
I think your challenge as somebody playing the spell is that you got to get them in a scenario where they have to empty their hand when they don't want to.
Yeah, and that's really hard to do. Like, I don't think that there's a reasonable way to set that up. Not only that, they made it the perfect cost, right? It gets hit by a smash.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 5 mana card that can't be inked. Like, hits by a smash, still gets hit by Dragonfire. I just can't imagine it being ever better than Cusco.
I'm pretty high on this card.
Okay, why?
Something like against people who don't want to just discard all their hands and aren't playing Smash. Something like a John Silver can make their reckless guys have to attack it.
What would you give it out of 5?
Oh man, like probably a 4.
Okay, so I think that I could see it being a 4 only under one condition. Can you guess what that condition is?
No.
If there's a 1 or a 2 Bell.
They just previewed a 3 Bell.
Okay, that doesn't help.
And it's bad.
Okay, but do we have a 1 or a 2 Bell?
No.
I can't think of one either.
The only bell we have from the previous set is the 4 mana bell that lets you play an additional ink.
Yeah, I give this card, I would give it a lot more points if there was a 1 or a 2 Bell.
Okay, so but Emerald has a bunch of cool cards, so let's move on to probably Emerald's good big guy that they showed. We have Relentless Beast, the 6 ink, 4 attack, 5 power, where whenever an opposing character is damaged, so that happens all the time, I mean, all over the place, you can ready this character. And
yeah, I like it.
So typically in set 1, when a character got readied like a second time or whatever, it couldn't quest anymore. This one doesn't have that problem. You can quest with this thing 5 or 6 times in a turn.
Yeah, no, I like this card a lot. I mean, maybe it can carry the green, the Emerald Steel deck back, right? I think that it fits really well with the damage theme that Steel has. Like maybe you're using like the blaster to deal 1 damage.
Ooh, Plasma Blaster, fire the cannons.
Yeah, you got some sick options.
You can untap you can ready your beast.
Yeah, I can see decks that are like, play this beast. If you don't deal with this beast right away, you're dead.
You're dead.
I kind of like that. I actually really like that, especially because we have that card which is like, what is it called? It's like 3 mana, return a card back to your hand and play a card with the same cost.
Oh yeah, bibbity bobbity boo.
Yeah, and that would pair well with like is it a Madame Toussaint or something? The one that brings a spell back from an action card.
Lady Tremaine.
Lady Tremaine, yeah. Lady Tremaine with Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo and Beast seem like a nice little combo.
We always are going to have to be cautious now because we're running into issues where we're naming like a bunch of cards we like. None of them can be played as an ink. I think like in the first set, it was pretty free to just build your deck. Like, however, in the second set, you're gonna have to really consider how many cards you're playing that you can't play as ink. You're gonna have to make some sacrifices now because there's so many good cards you want to play them all.
Yeah, but Beast is a combo piece, and it's also inkable, so it doesn't really run into that problem.
No, I mean for Beast, it's not a consideration. Beast is like a 5 out of 5, right? I mean, this card Beast is incredible. Potentially opens up new archetypes, including combo.
Yeah, I mean, Emerald is the combo color.
Right. I mean, that's how I feel too. Emerald also has some enablers, right? So you have Bucky, a 2-ink 1/1 with Ward. This was Patch's squirrel friend. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, each opponent chooses and discards a card. I should say it's Kronk's, not Patches. I got that wrong. But whenever you play a Floodborn, each opponent discards a card. Kind of cool. What if you have a lot of Floodborn in your deck? I mean, Floodborn are powerful cards. This shift mechanic is pretty good. So what do you think? It has Ward, so it sticks around. Hard for them to get rid of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a cool card. I don't know how good it's going to be. I'm not a big fan of. I mean, maybe I'm biased. I think that Yellow Steel has been such a popular deck. I would hate to play a card that just freely dies to.
Like grab your swords and Tinkerbells.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. We don't know how popular those cards are going to remain.
I think that they're only getting more popular.
Me too. But against them, you can play it as an ink, so nothing wrong with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel wary on discard strategies because every card is a live draw. So I feel like discard strategies are great against decks that have more dead cards in their deck, and I think that if you don't play discard cards, then you are not one of the decks that are weak to that, right? So, yeah, I think that if a discard deck is good, Bucky is certainly a part of it.
Nice.
Thinkable, and it's got some cool synergies.
What about Prince John, the other discard enabler? So this is a 3-ink. You can't play it as an ink. Quests for 2, and it has Ward, so it can stick around through a Tinkerbell even. Whenever your opponent discards one or more cards, you draw a card for each card discarded. So this is sort of, capping off your discard effect. Something like You Have Forgotten Me now draws 2 cards. There's a new Emerald card in the set called Hypnotize, which makes him discard a card and you draw a card. With this, you would draw 2 cards. That's insane. That's a Friends on the Other Side with upside.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this card is... I mean, again, if a discard strategy is good, this card is a part of it. I mean, the thing that's really interesting is what I don't like and about green in general is I don't want there to be a curve of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all Ward cards. And I feel like we're headed in that direction.
You can't target any of my characters, but they're all pretty weak.
Yeah, but they stick around and they're like making you discard cards and they're drawing cards. So
it's the bane of something like a traditional style draw go control deck. You have to be on the board to beat this strategy.
Yeah, but it seems as though they're still making it weak to grab your sword.
Right.
And so if you're playing grab your sword and Rapunzel's, I just can't imagine green being good even after the set. But let's see the rest of the green cards.
Well, what if you gave all your green characters resist too? You ever thought about that?
Have I thought about it? No, not really.
I mean, the other green cards are, we have Hypnotize, which I already talked about. They discard a card, you draw a card.
Love that card.
Mm-hmm. I like it a lot too. You can play it as an ink. It's a 3-ink action. We also have a 2-ink action called Bounce. Return a chosen character of yours to your hand to return another chosen character to their player's hand. People were pretty excited about this card sort of before we got all the Madam Mim cards. I think after all the Madam Mim cards, this certainly seems like an effect that there's plenty of. Mm-hmm. But maybe if you're not playing Amethyst and you wanted to experiment with this kind of thing, it's not so bad. It does let you reuse your Enters the Battlefield effects. We already talked about Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, which also lets you reuse your Enters the Battlefield effects.
I mean, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is the reason to be in green.
Really?
That card's incredible.
Talk to me.
I mean, there's just so many combos. First of all, I mean, with purple, that's the most obvious place to go.
Yep.
If you end up going with yellow, I mean, like, I just love bouncing Little Mermaid.
The Spectacular Singer.
Yep.
And then also, obviously Rapunzel, heal your characters. And there's even more in the next set, but something like Lady Tremaine, any of these enters the battlefield.
Yeah,
Really
Stitch.
Surfer
Stitch. Yeah.
Silly Surfer. Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo does seem really strong. You can't play it as an ink. Do you think that there's any competition for that slot? I mean, what are you thinking?
Is there any competition for that slot for Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo
Mm-hmm.
in terms of songs?
Sure.
No. I mean, the card just replaces itself with a lot of different cards.
Are you ready to talk about the Ruby cards?
Yeah, let's go to Ruby.
Okay, so right now, in terms of strategy, there's really only about 3 cards in Ruby that we can really talk about that aren't just like sort of draft level vanillas.
Yep.
The first one I want to talk about is the Floodborn Minnie Mouse, just because this one seems to open up a lot of options for what we can do with our ink and what types of different songs we can sing and things like that. So talk to me a little bit about the 2/3 evasive for 4 with shift 2.
Well, I mean, this card is phenomenal. I can imagine playing it mainly because there is a one mana 1/3 lore for one Minnie Mouse
Mm-hmm.
in Ruby already, and then you can shift this on turn 2, and then if you don't like it, then you can return it to your hand with Madam Mim.
Oh, true.
So you end up getting both cards back. So it puts in the work. We also already know that Pongo was a playable card,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a Pongo that can come down super early. We know that this is going to be a race centric format. I think that Minnie Mouse allows you to, on multiple fronts, like just get ahead in the race.
It is the Wide-Eyed Diver.
Yep. Great card. Love it.
All right. So there is a 3/2 Minnie Mouse that is also sort of making waves, and we can talk about it really briefly because it's a 2-drop that passes the Simba test. So Simba is no longer going to be the end-all be-all of 2-drops, right? Because there's vanillas in almost every color now that can handle it on the flop, whereas before that wasn't true.
Yeah. Yeah. I never felt that way about Simba. I just always played Rafiki and killed it. And Madam M is just gonna do that for me now.
Okay, so the next option for Ruby, I want to talk about the new Scar, Vicious Treater. This is a 7 mana, can't play as an ink, so that right off the bat is hugely negative for a card's ability to see play. Basically, is competing with Be Prepared, is another one that is seeing a lot of play. So what does this do? It's a 6/5 with Rush. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you can ready this character, and he can't quest for the rest of the turn. So this character could machine gun 5/1/1s, for example. If you give it any amount of resist, it could kill everybody that's tapped,
Well, I think those are not more if situations. First thing I want to say is Scar's art is beautiful. Love the art. Art is amazing. But it's a 6/5, so you already know where this card lies, right? It's a Maui.
Yep.
That costs you more that can't be inked.
Right.
And of course you can lure 2 with it, but you can't lure 2 after when you've already killed something. So it's not like fixing any problems with those decks. So it's competing against Aladdin, which in a 7 mana Aladdin is something that you can ink. So I cannot imagine playing this card is just adding too many uninkables in your deck. I think that this card is like a 2 at best.
Great. Okay, the next red card is going to be Dinner Bell. This is an item. We talked about a little bit how the color dynamics are changing. The abilities that the colors have are different. Dinner Bell is a 4 ink item. You can't play it as an ink. You can pay 2 and tap it to draw cards equal to the damage on chosen character of yours and then banish them. So something like Ruby Steel never could draw cards before, but it had big creatures. So here, if you have something like a Cerberus or a new Goofy that's a 10/10 in play, you could potentially be seeing yourself drawing a whole new hand or something similar to that, right?
Yeah, it seems as though it just pairs so well with Maui, right? So pairing well with Maui is like there's often this awkward situation where you are holding a Be Prepared, but you don't want to cast it because you've played a Maui and taking care of one of the thing, and you're still like putting them in a weird situation. This creates a lot more situations where you can draw cards off of your Dinner Bell, cash in that Maui, and then Be Prepared safely. So yeah, I think that it's creating more scenarios. Specifically, blue red really helps with that. I would say ruby steel. They still had Beastmare,
Yep.
but other than that, they didn't really have anything else. Well, they also had a whole new world, but mainly Dinner Bell is giving like, I mean, people want to play Sapphire Ruby,
Yeah.
and that's a color combination that had like nothing.
There was really no ability to play Sapphire Ruby in the last set, and now it's definitely going to be a push color combination. We can even talk about, we're about to move into Sapphire anyway.
Yep.
We can talk about the new Floodborn Gaston. So this is a Gaston that is 6 ink. It has shift 4. You can't play it, but whenever you play that character, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You can put 1 into your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order.
Yep.
Pretty good card advantage. Competes really well with the Robin Hood, that when you cast it, you could draw a card if they had more cards in hand than you. This kind of, replaces it a little bit because it quests for 1 more, and you get to, instead of draw a card, you get to choose from the top 3 cards of your deck. In Magic the Gathering, that's an Anticipate. Pretty good effect, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the card is solid. Easily replaces Robin's.
Mm-hmm.
The condition is much easier to meet. Obviously, Robin you can ink. So I just like the curve of like playing Gaston into a Hades.
Yep.
I think that curve is quite nice. Yeah, I think that blue is looking to upgrade the most. One of the colors that are upgrading the most from the spoilers that we've seen so far.
So let's talk about some of these new. They're also maybe the most evolve-y color in terms of shift. They have sort of the best shift cards that I can think about, and like really good shift synergies.
Talk about this Cogsworth.
Let's talk about Cogsworth. So we're gonna go small to big. So the first Cogsworth we see is a 2 ink 2/3, pretty good little stat line. It says your characters with reckless gain tap to gain a lore. Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, what are my reckless characters? Maui, Gaston. These are characters that don't mind having the ability to quest for 1, especially Maui.
Yes.
But that's not really the main attraction. The main attraction is you play this on 2, and then on 3 you can shift it up to the powerful Grandfather Clock. This is a Cogsworth with shift 3. It has ward, so your opponents aren't targeting it. You're not going to get the free 2-for-1 from the Dragon's Mirror. And then what does it say? Your other characters gain resist +1. So damage dealt to them is reduced by 1. Resist is a hugely powerful ability. We already talked about it a little bit on this.
This is the counter to Tinkerbell.
This is the Tinkerbell killer. I mean, their Tinkerbell comes in, doesn't do anything, hits something for 3, which...
This is a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, this card is great.
Yeah, love this card. And I think that, this is going to put a stamp on it for me. Yellow blue is going to be a really hard deck to beat.
I think this guy's good with a lot of the green cards as well, right? Yeah. The Bucky that says whenever you play a Floodborn, draw a card. Like, all of a sudden, that guy having resist, and you drew a card after you made all your guys so much bigger with Cogsworth. Like, I think blue-green is also looking at, like, really excited to get into some of the Floodborn synergies in this set. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Floodborn synergies, I want to talk about some of my favorite cards that we've seen, just because they're, like, my favorite character we've seen. The Great Mouse Detective, Basil, has a set of 3 cards in this set. Mm-hmm. Really exciting and funny for me. I love Basil. We'll go small to big again. We have... I've lost it. But we have a 2-mana 2/2 with support 1. Or with support. That's not bad. It only quests for 1. It's a common card. And then there's another one that is a 4-mana 3/4, but you can play all of these as an ink, notably. I think these are going to be kind of the backbone if Floodborn synergies are really good, because the thing that it all evolves into is a shift 5, 6 ink. You can play it as an ink 3/4, where if you use shift to play the character, you can draw 2 cards when it enters play, and it quests for 3. Basil, the Great Mouse Detective. Noteworthy because blue Sapphire always had a trouble with drawing cards. Now we have Play My Guy, Draw 2. That's basically a Stitch Spectacular Surfer. This one also quests for 3. It's maybe not as big, but it's still like a big player and draws 2 cards. What do you think of the Great Mouse Detective package?
I mean, beautiful card. Any card that says draw 2. I I've always felt like that. The shifting has a downside to it, but this shift seems like it's all upside.
Yeah, negates the downside immediately by replacing the 2 cards that you use to put into the shift mechanic. Shift, I think they did a good job with the downside of making it just so much cheaper. Let's talk about
the rules behind it are really great too, especially with like putting cards in inkwell. You get 2 cards in your inkwell, bouncing it back to your hand. You get both the cards back. Just beautiful, beautiful.
Cards stay together. All right, we have Prince Charming, the 4-mana 3/3 quest for 3. We already had that effect in Emerald. Now we have it in blue. That's just interesting. I think it's something to keep in mind. It's also a prince because we're seeing a few prince synergies. The rest of the blue cards we've seen so far are 4 dozen eggs, which gives your character resist 2 for a turn. Probably you won't play it, but it's worth noticing that like if you think they have a grab your sword, a 4 dozen eggs is like a counter, but you can also play as an ink.
Again, I do think it's better than like heal your characters for Akuna Matata. I think it's an upgrade over that, so potentially in that style of deck.
It could be cool if you have a lot of characters to turn them all sideways in quest and then cast 4 dozen eggs and suddenly they can't really attack profitably.
I also like this Fang crossbow. Banish this item, banish chosen dragon character, and then you can pay 2 to make a character have two less power that turn.
Sapphire has like cared about items a lot in the first set, so I think any new items that sort of enter the domain of something we would care about is really good. Notably, items that can banish really have synergy with like Tamatoa, so that's great. So yeah, that rounds it out.
To Steel.
Yeah, let's move on to Steel. Kind of the main card I want to talk about in Steel is sort of like the big bad. The thing I love about Steel is that they want to like win fights. They want to have the biggest characters. So sort of the big Shift 5 Cinderella is like one that really has my attention that I want to talk about a lot. This character has resist 2, which makes it completely huge. So when you think of it as a 5/5, don't really think of it as a 5/5. It quests for 3, so it's good at questing. And it says whenever you play a song, this character may challenge ready characters this turn. Not an effect we've ever seen in Lorcana.
Yeah. I think that this card is just the mirror breaker. Right, like it beats all the other yellow steel decks. It beats any deck that's trying to kill your stuff with damage. This Cinderella just beats the living crap out of everybody.
This is my Amber Steel new queen Cinderella.
A card like this makes me never want to play a card like a color combination that doesn't just like straight up say banish target character.
I like getting scrappy with people. I'm down for us to both have creatures that we have to fight.
Yeah, I'm not trying to create more if conditions, that's my whole.
This is a battle cruiser game. We're gonna have 2 big guys, and we're gonna see what happens. We do have a new Cinderella to support that shift, so there are 2 Cinderellas across Amber and Steel.
And this Cinderella is good because it loots.
It loots. When you play this character, draw a card, discard a card. It's an effect we've seen in Steel before, so it's not really adding to that. But it being a 2-mana 2/2 that can shift up, I mean that's pretty good. The only other notable Steel card is there's a 9-mana 10/10 that quests for 4.
I would say the Tiana is pretty good.
The Tiana is really good. Well, there's actually a few more. One is the new Robin Hood, which taps to deal 1 damage to a character. It's questionable if that'll see play. It's a 2-mana, you can't ink it 1/3. And then there's the Tiana, which is a 4-mana, you can't ink it resist 2. And while this card is exerted and you have no cards in your hand, your opponent can't play actions. Steel sometimes has those you have no cards in your hand strategies. I could see this being a good top end in an aggro deck because it doesn't die so easily and it doesn't let your opponent cast most essentially like a be prepared if it's a problem.
Or a whole new world.
The only issue with this card is you can't play it as an ink. So that's, first of all, a really contested slot. And then second of all, this is a card that's not good all the time, right? Because sometimes you're going to have a lot of cards in your hand, especially in like Amber Steel. You're trying to have a lot of cards in your hand. You're trying to draw cards. And then secondly, if your opponent even cares about playing actions, right? So like there's a lot of ways that this card could be bad. Normally with a card that you can play as an ink, that's fine. But with this one, you can't. So that's an issue for me.
Yeah, I would say this card really makes most sense in like a blue Steel deck. Right, Sapphire Steel, because you can use like Fishbone Wand to ink it. So I've always liked like cards like this in that type of strategy, and we know we're getting more support over there. So yeah, I mean, I think that like that's the deck that you end up emptying your hand every single turn,
Mm-hmm.
and so this type of effect is like something you can recreate over and over again, and Tiana can have big impact in those games.
And then sort of the last card I think we're going to talk about today, and then next week there might be more spoilers that we can talk about. Mouse Armor, the 2 ink item where a chosen character gets resist 1 until the start of your next turn.
Mm-hmm.
2 of these in play, and you got menaces out here. You know, you got stuff that you can't deal with. So this item stacks pretty well, but you can't play it as an ink. What do you think of the Mouse Armor?
I mean, great and blue steel,
Yep.
garbage and everything else.
That's what I was thinking too. Exactly, yeah. Great in blue steel, garbage, and everything else.
Again, it's like it's great against everything, but we're putting ourselves weak to. I mean, again, I hate to say it, but Ruby Amethyst just seems to be well set up. But this is only 57 cards so far, and we have like 100 and something left to be spoiled. But I think this is like a good start. Yeah, I mean, so far, I want to see them make cards that are not good for purple, red.
Right.
Ruby.
Cards that aren't just Ruby. What's your favorite card so far?
I mean, it's my favorite card because I like to win more. I mean, Spellbook.
Yeah, mine is Cinderella.
No surprise.
I want to attack their untapped characters.
Yeah. Well, that does it for this week. We got some of the spoilers in so far, but we're looking forward to the rest of the spoilers coming out.
Yep.
We don't have a complete picture, but I do think that this game is still looking super sweet, and I like the card design.
Join us next week. Hopefully we'll have more spoilers, and we can maybe have a few decks sort of brewing around between the two of us. We'll see what we got.
Yep. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.